Hello, my name is Beloso, as you can see there. I come from the University of Santiago de Compostela in northwest Spain, and I present today, now here in this video, a paper that was thought to open a debate. So I have gathered some ideas on what could be the future of our science of medieval studies, especially history, and the role of digital humanities and open source resources in them. But, well, circumstances are what they are, so we can't have that lively debate I was hoping for. I just try to do my best and hope you enjoy it. So, when a person makes the crazy, illogical, short-sighted decision of studying history at university, certain questions will be asked many times over the years. The first one is usually a simple why. Along with this, other frequent ones are what's that useful for, or of course the classical what job opportunities does that have. The aspect of the utility keeps being asked not only to students but also further on when you develop a research career. For instance, when you tell someone that you have a state scholarship to do a PhD, it is not infrequent that a look of disapproval takes over that person's face, and you can even imagine the one sentence that they are not politely saying: are my taxes being employed in paying this person a salary for doing what exactly? That leads to another issue once you enter the heartless path of research, which is the need of economic funding. What do you need the money for when you only read books? Or we're looking for a cure for cancer, what are you doing? And so on. So again, with a pity, shameful look and trying to remember your historiography lessons, you say, almost whispering, that history is a science too, which deals with the study of men over time, which is quite important, right? So despite the clarity of arguments exposed in Mark Bloch's classical work, the debate has not come to an end yet. It maintains a constant presence since the beginning of modern historiography, resulting in different changes of terminology and description of the discipline during the decades. History as an art, history as a social science, history as part of humanities. But I don't think that's the moment of entering the debate. A good example of this are the results we obtain when typing in Google, is history a science? If we take a look, for example, to the frequently asked or the usually related questions, is history considered a science? What makes history a science? Who said history is a science? And then we have this easy and quick answer that Google provides. But if we kept looking through, especially through the first page, as you can see, we have a lot of results. So some of the results displayed in these two first pages present appealing titles for the historian in the hand of the holy grail of the discipline. Can history be a science? Is the question that Carlson asks, and Owen gives a clear answer in his blog. History is not a science. Then we can find other things that are not so polemic in title, which is, for example, the unity of knowledge, history of science and art in an Ethiopian journal. And this last one leads to another debate, to another dimension of the debate, which focuses on whether history is a science or an art. So at this point, we could just adopt the words of Wesleyan and say that historians have been often worried by the ambiguous character of their trade, but they should not be. Wherever the discipline may be, it is appreciated both by the public at large and by their peers from other disciplines. In short, they live in the best of two worlds and they should better enjoy it. One way or the other, the study of history from different perspectives and in different times has managed to acquire a space of its own in the research field, thanks to the battle and great efforts of those who preceded us. I do not mean to enter the recurrent dispute between history or, in a broader picture, humanities and what has traditionally been considered as real science about who gets more funding and state investment, which would only lead to self-pity and disappointment with the established system, but to explore other alternatives to the heavily funded projects. even within the field of humanities itself, we find big differences depending, for example, on the country and its wealth, the level of internationalization of the institution to which the researcher belongs, etc. The chances of getting a decent funding for a project are multiplied when the application is supported or based in a high-profile research center, whilst small universities are usually even kept out of the run. One could think that the solution is simple. Focus research on a few centers per country, depending on the population and wealth, for example, and we could have like 1 in Austria, 2 in Spain, and 3 in the United Kingdom. Those institutions, like the Spanish National Research Council or the Austrian Academy of Sciences, which are organized in institutes of a specific profile, as the Institute of Medieval Research, you have here the logo, could receive the funding and leave the universities for the teaching part. Of course, this is an absurd exaggeration that hopefully we will never see happening. Universities must continue to be one central part of research, including the ones from peripheral areas, that is, the ones that are not situated in capital cities or economical centers as the one that I belong to, for example. But when even the continuity of research in big institutions is compromised, living under the constant threat of budget cuts, how can projects be developed in smaller ones, and how can we carry on with our research? So we have to go directly to one idea: digital humanities, and admit that digital humanities have come to stay, as no one would argue in this point. I'm not going to enter in this crazy field of trying to define digital humanities. I think we've all heard several definitions and arguments about that, so I'm just going to keep with the meme part and a couple of jokes. And so, digital humanities have proven to be of great help when making new approaches to old topics, but also to work through paths that had not been explored yet or not so in depth. And when linked to another key concept, which is that of open source software, they open a new range of opportunities accessible to more people, with restrictions that do not come from money this time, but from technological skills. The question, so digital humanities, future is right now. So the question is, how can this be applied specifically to medieval studies? We can adopt at least two compatible perspectives. On the one hand, one can take advantage of the changes in scientific policy, with an increasing tendency to publish the results of the projects in open source, be it a written text or be it a digital resource that is made available online for free. And on the other hand, the medievalist can become a creator of his or her own resources with the help of the different tools of the digital humanities. An example: if a person were to start a project for the study of historical medieval maps, he or she would find several of the most important ones available for free online. Free access, of course, if it's for free. These projects are in most cases promoted from the preserving institutions, usually state-funded, and the number of digitized maps keeps increasing every year. We can find, for example, good quality digitalizations of original maps. Usually, online catalogs of most important European libraries offer specific information about their collections of maps and grant access to the ones that have been digitized. For example, you have the British Library, the French Library, and the Spanish Library, but there are a lot more than I'm sure you know. And then we also have annotated maps, as for example, I just brought a couple of names: the Bettinger map or the virtual map. You can see, have the links there if you want to go through them. I really recommend them because they're great projects. So these tools and others grant access from a computer with connection to the internet to medieval maps that are preserved in Paris, London, or New York. 20 years ago, the consult of manuscripts preserved in different institutions, countries, or continents would have meant a great personal and economic effort. Nowadays, the access to the originals is only required to study the materiality itself, helping both the researcher and the original source, which will not suffer the consequences of direct manipulation. This applies to the sources and the possibilities of access via modern tools, but we can also find examples of resource results online in the form of databases or other presentations that can become the base of a new research. These cases tend to focus on more specific topics that we can also find cartography involved in the process to continue with the established line. For example, I brought you here the Open Domesday, which is the first online copy of the Domesday book, and it offers two ways of exploring this well-known English text. Through a map, you can see in the left side of the page, and in the map we find like identifications of all the different toponyms that are mentioned in the book. For example, every dot is Harborne, the number of households, etc. And then, on the other hand, we can go explore the book itself. It gives access to a digitalization of the manuscript and the identification of different elements in each page. For example, the land and resources, the owners, and further information, different lands in one page, etc. So, thanks to this tool, finding if an old manor was mentioned in the Domesday book or locating another one requires only to type a name in a search box. So, another important field that has been widely developed in the past decades is that of the online corpora, the searchable and open databases that offer access to a great variety of materials from the three branches of the traditional classification of sources: written, visual, and material remains. For example, in the case of written sources, several projects allow the access to important collections of diplomatic sources, such as the Monumenta Germania Historica or P. Sawyer's Anglo-Saxon Charters. So, fortunately for us historians, the number of these digital tools keeps progressively increasing, contributing to a more affordable research and allowing the inquiry of a bigger number of materials. I've opened here while I speak the electronic Sawyer to show you the options you have here. For example, in the different ways of browsing, but for example, you can browse by kingdom. If we went to Anglo-Saxons and searching documents of King Alfred, and then you can choose the charter and the information about the archives, the summary, manuscript information. Other authors have talked or studied the same charter, and then we have the text, and sometimes in the translation of Anglo-Saxon charters to English. Both the digitalizations of maps and the online corpora are examples of what could be called benefiting from resources provided by institutions or individuals and that are product of the development of digital humanities. But there is still another phase: the possibilities that technology offers to collect, analyze, and represent data, and that do not necessarily need a huge injection of money. Continuing with the thematic line, as we have already seen, the possibilities of map representation nowadays have widely changed, and a static image is not necessarily required anymore. This is thanks to the geographical information systems, which make map elaboration easier and way more accessible. Free and open source software play an important role, clearly exemplified by the existence of an open source geospatial foundation, which, as you can see, there is a non-profit organization whose mission is to foster global adoption of open geospatial technology by being an inclusive software foundation devoted to an open philosophy and participatory community-driven development. It is not necessary to be an expert to create a basic map with locations. For example, we can use Google Maps to map the places mentioned in a source, as this example that I bring here, which maps a series of toponyms that appear mentioned in the narrative source Codex Calixtinus, Book 4, Chapter 3. Just an example that I have done myself. We can have different layers, in this case only 2, and each point can have additional information, be it a comment or an attribute layer. In this case, is just the information regarding the toponym on the country. Then, if required, the data can be downloaded in a format that is compatible with other open source software, as for example QGIS. QGIS is one of the several free and open source GIS software available nowadays. It offers a wide range of functionalities that go from the creation of a simple map with dots, a legend and a scale, to operations as list, coast, path or visibility analysis, heat maps, and more complex ones. For example, I'm trying to open here, yes, there we go, a project, it's like in Spain too, in Galicia, and I've represented like the rivers, which are useful because I was analyzing charts that mention a lot of rivers, and we have here I've mapped like just places related to a territorial entity, and in this case I was interested in representing the differences in the chronology to see if there was a change and if chronology was an important factor. So I've had just one layer, but with chronological division in different shades of green, and I have all this information associated to each of the points, like old toponym, new toponym, council, province, entity, year, and then a couple of ideas to classify them. And with this, I created a heat map, which is super cool. So we go back to the presentation. Any GIS requires an indispensable element, geographical information, which leads to the question of where to find it. As in previously referred fields, the volume of information available online is considerably high, which implies a great risk to get lost in the process of searching. For a first contact with the topic, a good option are the services offered by the public administrations of the area we are interested in. In the European case, a helpful tool is the information provided by under the Inspire Directive, which aims to create a European Union spatial data infrastructure which will enable the sharing of environmental spatial information among public sector organizations, facilitate public access to spatial information, blah blah blah, you can see. Then we have for the other tools, for example, Leaflet or OpenStreetMap. In the first case, Leaflet is an open source JavaScript library for creating interactive maps, and OpenStreetMap is a free editable map of the whole world. If you want to explore them, you have the links there in the presentation or in the written paper. These tools and other ones that I didn't list because it would be too much information are basic for the survival in the GIS world, especially when dealing with interactive maps and from a global perspective, and also if you're looking for free resources. That's key point. One of the recurrent problems in research is how to store it, organize, and handle data, especially when speaking of a group project. On this matter, open source has also something to offer with projects as Open Atlas, which is an open source web-based database system for complex archaeological, historical, and geospatial data. Unlike the tools mentioned until now, Open Atlas is a complex software that requires the involvement of a computer expert for its implementation. Anyhow, the code is available via GitHub, and as you can see in their website, it has been used by several projects and is still being used. For example, Thanatos, you see it's going on project. If you just take a look in the project, you will see that most of them involve Austrian institutions. That is because the Austrian Academy of Sciences and the Institute for Medieval Research are behind the development of Open Atlas, as well as the University of Vienna, I think, and other Austrian institutions. But it's, I mean, as you can see, for example, here the project Connect also involves the Royal Holloway University of London. So it's an open thing. Again, back to the presentation. Yeah. And I brought here, just to finish, an example of a project that uses Open Atlas, so you can see how it works. This project is digitizing patterns of power, also from the Austrian Academy of Science and the Institute for Medieval Research, with the cooperation of the University of Vienna. And if we go to their map viewer, you see the results. You don't see the structure of the database, of course. The project has several case studies, and we can choose and explore the results for one. In this case, was Eastern Alps, and it focuses on science of power. So let's go for political science of powers, and then places, like we are interested in settlements and military facilities, and where conflict has. Okay. So then we go to the map and we choose the points, and we have information about each of them, the events that happened there. It's not a very interesting one, but anyway, you have like places, actors, references, to think this is bibliographical information about the sources, like a lot of information. So, finish. The process of change in which we are involved nowadays is undeniable, and medieval studies are not and should not be on the sidelines. The development of technology has brought several improvements to humanities, and as medievalists we need to integrate them in our methodologies and adapt those tools to our requirements. At the same time, it is important to be aware of the difficulties and dangers implied, as the risk of getting lost in a sea of unhandled data or a digital product without scientific context, meaning, or conclusion. Digital humanities have come to stay, and to make our job easier and more democratic, economically speaking at least. The tendency towards the development of open source products can mean a great chance to the survival of smaller projects, and the cooperation between institutions is vital too. We no longer need to spend weeks moving from town to town, going to archives, taking notes in paper index cards that we later archive again, or trying to find someone that can do a map with locations. Budgets are tight, maybe tighter than ever, but the cooperation is probably easier than ever too. So this was the end of my paper when I wrote it, and the paper that you can see in the printed volume. But of course, there's a factor now that needs to be mentioned. It's the sorry, that caused that I'm recording this video and I'm not going to Florence, which I really was looking for, and that's the COVID-19. And of course, we need to think and ask ourselves which would be the impact of it. But of course, once that we've passed the drama of it, I think we all agree that we are aware that we are going to face a very important and very serious economical crisis. So those of us who come from Southern European countries, be it Spain, Portugal, Italy, Greece, I think we are still suffering the consequences of the 2008 crisis and the budget cuts that it implied, and we didn't really recover from it, especially in the field of research, universities, and humanities research. So what's going to happen next? Because some experts say that this crisis is going to be even worse, and we are going to be facing budget cuts, I'm quite sure. So we need to be aware, and also we need to try to find, I don't know how, but we are going to need to, I don't know, just cooperate. And I think these ideas, especially cooperation and open source, which is the sharing of information, we're seeing it in the time of getting a vaccine and finding medicines, finding a cure for the disease. It's been very important, but I think we can also apply these ideas in our fields. So, well, I think it's something that we are going to be talking about in the near future and probably for years, but we just try to keep positive, and maybe hopefully we will have the chance of discussing these things and other concerning our discipline in the near future. Meanwhile, thank you for listening and take care.